What is up, everybody? I don't know why I just did that. I must be watching too much Pepino Man. I'm doing the top 10 most undervalued baseball cards of all time, and I don't know why exactly I decided to take this challenge on. I put a lot of research into this, into thinking about, well, what are the top 10 most undervalued baseball cards? What I tried to do, I tried to narrow my scope to, the greatest players of all time. And, I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to be like, well, what about the 1989 Hensley Mullins? That's only 5 cents. Like, no, I'm talking about the greatest baseball players ever, the greatest cards ever, and which ones are undervalued. So you'll see, and obviously I'm sure everyone will have their own opinion about what they think are the most undervalued cards. But without further ado, let's get started. At number 10, I have the 1910 T206 Tris Speaker. So you can see here, I've done a lot of research behind this. First of all, you have the player rank. So the player rank is about a year ago, ESPN provided their opinion on the top 100 greatest baseball players of all time. So you can see here that Tris Speaker was number 41 on that list, and I've compared it against these other baseball cards, like these are because they're all T206 cards. You have the Ty Cobb, the Walter Johnson, the Honus Wagner, the Cy Young, the Christy Mathewson, all in a PSA 3 grade. But if you notice that the cost for the Tris Speaker is only $600 when compared to, obviously, the Honus Wagner, which is $1.2 million, although you can't really compare the two. But another thing that you'll see here is that the population, and the variation. So with the Tris Speaker, there's only one variation. This is the one that you see there is the only version of the Tris Speaker. So like Ty Cobb, there's like a red back, there's a green back, there's one with a bat on shoulder. So there's 4 different variations, which is why the population is so much higher. Where there's like, if you look up T206 PSA 3, you're going to see 673 total cards if you combine them all together. And then the cost, by the way, is the average cost on eBay. So I looked at the sales. So you can see here, a PSA 3 Ty Cobb is going to cost you $2,000. Walter Johnson's going to cost you $1,200. Cy Young's going to cost you $1,000. Christy Mathewson's a good value, $700, but with Christy Mathewson, there's 469 T206 cards that you could choose from at a PSA 3, whereas Tris Speaker, only 141, and Tris Speaker had the most doubles of all time. He has 792 doubles, which is the most of all time, and might be one of the most underrated players of all time, and needless to say, one of the most underrated baseball cards. Next up, at number 9, is the 1933 GOUDEY Rogers Hornsby. Yet again, another player that is completely underrated. Led the NL in batting average, slugging percentage, on-base percentage for 6 years in a row. So obviously one of the most underrated players. And you can see here I compared it against other cards from the 1930s. And you could pick up a Rogers Hornsby PSA 4 for $300. And if you compare that, obviously, against DiMaggio and Lou Gehrig and Ted Williams, it's not even close in terms of cost. And Rogers Hornsby was right there. I mean, he's a top 25 player of all time. So I have him on number 9 on my list. Number 8, and I think I've alluded to this in previous videos. The Johnny Bench rookie from 1968 Topps is incredibly cheap. One of the greatest catchers of all time, if not the greatest. And if you look at other cards from the 1960s, Tom Seaver rookie is going to cost you $1,000, and the Pete Rose rookie is going to cost you $2,000. And yet Johnny Bench is ranked higher and is only $250. Which is a lot of money, but it's still, in comparison to Tom Seaver and Pete Rose, it is a really good value. At number 7 is the 2001 Topps traded Albert Pujols. I just feel like Pujols is one of those guys that, you know, the first 10 years of his career were insane. He batted 300, 30 home runs, and 100 RBIs for 10 years in a row. And he's just one of those guys that since then, like, you know, with Mike Trout coming onto the scene, he's like, his cards and his popularity has lost some steam. But I think after he retires, people are going to start looking back at his career and just being like, being amazed at what he did. And you can see here the Topps traded version. There's only 175 PSA 10s. When you compare that to 2,000 of the Topps traded Miguel Cabrera. So pretty good value for the 2001 Topps traded Pujols. At number 6 is the 1965 Topps Joe Morgan. And you can see here, I mean, if you look at him against two other guys from the 1960s, their rookie cards from the 1960s, Steve Carlton, who's number 43 on the list, $200, but the population, there's about 1,000 of the PSA 7s, whereas Joe Morgan's card, PSA 7, is only going to cost $170 for a PSA 7, and there's only 494 in population. And then, of course, the Nolan Ryan, which it's kind of funny because he's so popular, and his rookie card is so iconic with the Jerry Koosman, but he's only number 50 on the, at least on the ESPN rank, whereas Joe Morgan was 38. And of course, the Nolan Ryan rookie PSA 7 is going to cost you $1,200. Number 5, and these cards I decided to put together, the 86 Topps traded Barry Bonds and the 84 Fleer update. Obviously, two guys that were just these unbelievable players during their playing career. You know, Bonds, most walks, most home runs. Clemens with 7 Cy Youngs, which is the most ever. These two cards are like a Barry Bonds PSA 10 is $110. And a Roger Clemens 1984 Fleer is $150. They're both, you know, relatively expensive, but they're still somewhat affordable. And I just feel like, you know, in the next year or two, and I think some people have mentioned it, over the next year or two, we're going to see those two cards just go up and up and up as they come closer and closer to the Hall of Fame, which I think is inevitable, because if you're going to let Bud Selig into the Hall of Fame and guys that are suspected roid users like Ivan Rodriguez, it's almost inevitable that these two guys are going to get into the Hall of Fame. And when they do that, I would expect that the cards will just keep going up. So this might be, the final opportunity to seize getting them at these prices. So these two cards are undervalued mainly because I think they're going to go up in value over the next couple of years. Number 4 is the 1987 Topps traded Greg Maddux. Might be the greatest pitcher that I've ever seen. Won 4 consecutive Cy Youngs, so when he was on his game, he was unbelievable. And you can pick up a PSA 10 Maddux right now for $30. PSA 10 for a Topps traded, his rookie card. There's only 2,900 cards out there, and that's, very comparable to the 89 Upper Deck Griffey that sells for $400 for a PSA 10. And I just think, for $30, is just an incredibly undervalued card. Granted, it's during the, the junk wax era, but it was part of the traded set, so there's fewer amounts out there. And he was actually ranked number 12 in the top 100 ESPN of all time, which is incredibly high. And I could totally see why. He was a fantastic pitcher. Number 3, the 1959 Topps Bob Gibson. And I tried to compare this card because you can get a 59 Topps PSA 5 Bob Gibson right now for around $350, $400, which again is a lot of money. But when you compare it to a guy like Sandy Koufax, which is going to cost you $750, and Roberto Clemente, who's going to cost you $2,200, and then you can see the population is even lower on a PSA 5. So again, just a guy that was just unbelievable. I think in 1968 he pitched to a 1.12 ERA, which is insane. Number 2, and it's the 1991 Upper Deck Final Edition Pedro Martinez. This card right now, you can go on the internet right now and buy a PSA 10 version of it for $20. So this is an incredibly cheap card. It's, you know, of one of the greatest baseball players of all time. He's actually ranked number 11 of the greatest baseball players of all time. And you could pick up his rookie card, PSA 10, perfect, for $20 right now on the internet. And there's actually, you know, you're thinking, okay, well, that's the 1991. There's probably tens of thousands of these, and there's only 2,900 of those of the PSA 10. So for $20, you know, I think it's a pretty good deal. And then number 1, finally, and for those of you that follow baseball cards, this probably won't come as much of a surprise. I have as number 1 the 1957 Topps Frank Robinson. You can pick up a PSA 5 of his for $150, which is insane. I mean, if you look at the other cards from the 50s of guys that he ranks against, you know, even, you know, Roberto Clemente, $2,200. Josh Gibson, which, you know, Josh Gibson's in there because there's probably like one of them. But then you have Ernie Banks, which is $800. And the population is like, there's only 600 PSA 5s. So anyway, that's my video, guys. Hopefully it'll spark some debate about, you know, what you guys think is, you know, some of the most undervalued. And I'd love to see somebody do a video on football or basketball or hockey. I'm not even going to try to do that because I don't know those sports as well as I know baseball. But I think it would be really interesting to see what you guys think, because I know that vintage cards, you know, for football especially, that there's some really great value out there. So just thought it would be fun to share that with you guys. Did a lot of analysis on it. I do want to eventually I actually want to look at some of the prospects and give you guys my opinion on some of the upcoming prospects. And I also, by the way, I got the baseball card crate, which I did a 6-month subscription to it. I think it's just an awesome idea. It's something that it's all hobby packs instead of retail. So it's a lot of fun to rip through. So once I get that, it should be coming in a couple of weeks. I'll make sure to share that with you guys. Hope you're all doing well, and feel free to leave comments, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed my video now.